Evening all, welcome back to Eve Frontiers. So, interestingly, the first video didn't do too bad. I wasn't entirely sure how many people would watch that, given that this is one of those kind of like it or hate it or despise it or crypto it game. But so far, I think it's not too bad. A lot of people not particularly liking the whole concept of it. I think there's a lot of I don't know. There's a lot of nonsense, I think, out there with CCP at the moment being sold. That seems to be an interesting one. They're obviously denying it. And as is true with all corporate communications, that even the most, staunch denial of anything means they are absolutely about to do it. And it means someone's whistleblown or told so that it kind of derails something. But I think it's very likely that Pearl Abyss will sell CCP Games, because if you look at their financials, it makes a lot of money. Eve Online is a phenomenally successful product. It makes $60 million a year. I think its running costs are like $11 million, and they are currently losing money because they're actually doing the right thing, which is they're investing in their own company. So Eve Vanguard, Eve Frontiers, these are all the right things to go and do. How and what is funding what, who knows? But it's worth just putting out there that, I think it's not a bad thing if CCP Games get sold, because it probably would be, hopefully, to a more responsive buyer, let's say. Now, the issue with that is, again, with all companies, if your hedge fund buys it, all they'll do is just sweat the asset and basically, sunset it in like 5 years. Whereas I hope that another developer picks it up and says, let's see what more we could do with this, because, EVE Online, phenomenally successful game. It does make a lot of money. A lot of people don't like it, but a lot of people love it. And that's the wonderful line that we find ourselves playing. Eve Frontiers, I think, I like it. I have been having a blast in it. What you see in the background as I sing lullabies to you of wonderful notes of Britishness, hopefully is of interest to you, because I found there's lots of things in this game that are actually quite interesting. Most particularly the survival aspect. You will see, keep watching, because you will see in a moment an epic voyage, or at least the parts of it that are worthwhile explaining, because fuel is everything in this game. If you run out of fuel, you're done. And it's very unlikely anyone will be able to come save you, because jumping is no joke. This is by far the single USP of this whole game, for me, is the exciting fact that it is something you could really get wrong, and that's it, you're done. And I will explain as we go, and we'll show that. But before we do, this is my home system. Please feel free to come grief me. You are more than welcome. I don't live there anymore. This is where I built a lot of things. I built a Jow, or I think they call it a Reaver now, or something like that. It's kind of like the better Corvette, but it's terrible for traveling. It's a combat ship, really. But what you're seeing here is tier 3 coil guns, or rail guns as normal people call them. And they hit hard. Like, coil guns in this game are absolutely brilliant. So I think I've enjoyed this kind of exploration part of the system. So what sites appear, I went around all the various sites. I did various kind of PvP things, and it was PvE things, and it was fun. Came across loads of other players. Not one person shot at each other yet, and I'm quite surprised at that. I thought there's probably griefing happen everywhere. I mean, certainly in the comms. The corp chat. Oh my days, people whinge and whine and whiffle about like someone being ganked in a starter system. It's like this game's pretty going to be hardcore. So it does make me laugh. Anyway, so this kind of phase of the game came to an end to me, because you can only do so much in one system. To me, it's about getting out there and exploring. And I think that is by far the most interesting part of the game. You have to manage a number of things. Firstly, the jump bubble. The jump bubble is terrible at the moment, but they'll improve it, which is how far your jump fuel takes you, but also how far your heat capacity takes you. Ooh, that's right. You generate heat like your mum. And that's why it's interesting to me, because basically you have to think about like where you are. There's something like heat death in systems. If you jump into the wrong system that's a very sort of strong, powerful star, then you could be in a position where it's actually very difficult to jump out of it. Right, interesting, right? I mean, this is cool. There is a way to get around that, though. You just warp back and forward between 2 points, and your ship naturally cools while it's in warp. There you go, I helped you. I figured that one out after a while. The fuel is the biggest thing. You have to find carbonaceous ore to then refine it, to make water, to then turn that water into D1 fuel. I found numerous rifts as I went as well. Rifts give you salt, don't ask me why, and a few other things, but it gives you then access to much better quality fuels where you can jump further and do more. I liked it. I liked the complexity. It took me a while to figure it out. I liked the buildings. I liked the... this is a sped up example of how I jump. Now, please feel free to rip on me in the comments if you think that I am some sort of grief lord for doing this. But I jumped into some, again, thousands, hundreds of thousands of systems in this game. So I jumped in, went to the carbonaceous ore, and I dropped 3 refineries because that's how I roll, bro. And I basically started mining into each and then starting the process of making, I guess, carbonaceous ore refinement. Now, it makes carbon. Is it carbon? I can't remember. But the bit you throw away, didn't need that. We need just water. Water is the most important bit for traveling. And as you can see here, balancing, and I've sped this up because obviously this was like about 40 minutes of fueling the ship, but I had to do this like every 5 or 6 jumps. I love this. This to me felt like, and I'm going to make a very weird reference here, so post in the comments if you understand this reference. The Division 1, remember that game in New York? Brilliant game. And they gave it to a developer to kind of play and tinker with it, and they made survival mode. I loved that survival mode. My brother and I played that loads. It was so much fun. Because it was in a snowstorm and you had to kind of get out of, you had to survive, get into the dark zone, then do something or rescue something, can't remember, fight off an agent, incredibly difficult baddie at the end, and get rescued. And then you could take all the loot with you. Oh my God, it was so good. And you had no equipment with you, by the way. You went in naked, not literally. And it was brilliant because in the middle of a snowstorm, it was exciting. I remember thinking that was good. I'm getting vibes of that mode from this. It feels like the survival mode for the Division for EVE Online, because they're kind of taking you out of the comfort of everything being quite easy, loads of overview, local showing you who's there, fuel being abundant, occlusion is now a thing. So fighting those NPCs, I had issues because some of them went around the back of the building or the station, and I couldn't shoot them. So I had to think about that. Apparently there's friendly fire. So if you fire as a big fleet, you can have issues. I love this. I'm really liking it. And I think for a lot of people, it's not your cup of tea. I get it. If you want to play something like EVE Online that has that large industry blueprints, very accessible, very fun, then stay with that game. But this to me represents something different. It's like, a survival mode built for that sort of game in this. And I liked it. I really nerded out on it. And as you can see, this whole process of fuel becomes an absolutely critical thing. Without fuel, you're pretty screwed. And this is why I think this has been a very interesting little journey for me, because just going, I mean, if I think of the universe as a disk, I've moved, a few percentage points across that disk, but it's taken over 30 jumps. I've had to refuel exactly like you see here, maybe 10 times. And I like that. That's interesting to me. I haven't got a very good ship. It's pretty poor. It's like the Ibis equivalent of EVE Online. But there's something definitely about it. I am very partial to this game. Like that big cream cake bun in the window of the bakery. I'm looking at it with a bit of lust and a bit of interest, because I kind of like what they're doing with this. You don't see other players, so a lot of PvPers, oh my God, you're going to hate this game, because you're not really going to see a lot of people, and it's difficult to get to people to then shoot them and own them. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think this takes it all the way back to a sci-fi opera in space, where you're basically given a system and you learn it or you die. And I think that is quite compelling. But there we go. I think the challenge here is, are they going to finish it? Because I do think there is some uncertainty now over these sort of projects. Whenever sort of the word sale gets mentioned, and I am talking as a very responsible corporate citizen who has been through, 3-4 mergers now, where large multinational corporations have merged or bought each other, and you get that wonderful letter through the post which says, you're now part of the blah 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 family, and they give you a free pen and a key ring. and you think to yourself, wow, like everything's so different. Like the culture is different, the attitude is different. I went from a manufacturing business that happened to do consultancy and property to a pure property consultancy. Okay, both of them were mega billion-dollar businesses, but like the difference was night and day. Because when you've got a company that makes things, that's the most important thing. When you've got a company that sells hours of a human being to clients, very different, but sort of feel to it. And I think that could happen here because, I don't know what Pearl Abyss really did with CCP Games, maybe other than just milk it. I think they took it as a good way to have something on their books that's quite profitable. And I think for companies that are particularly software, you need to be able to borrow money at all times, because who knows when your next big project literally tanks. And I'm going to reference Ubisoft here. Ubisoft, I think, are a great example of a company that should be absolutely awash with money because of just the pure class games they've created. Unfortunately, not recently. They have made some absolute howlers that just seem to, they've not done well. And I won't get into the politics of it because there's a lot of people that I'm sure are now hammering their keyboard into the comment section as to why. So if you're interested as to why Ubisoft is not doing well, go and have a look at the comments. I'm not going to talk about that because I don't want to kind of talk about that. But I find it interesting that seems to be the issue of software at the moment, is it's a very challenging environment, that having cash cows like EVE Online on your books, when you then go to the Bank of Korea and say, hey, I need to borrow $100 million, please, they'll look at the balance sheet and say, well, EVE's balance sheet is actually not that great, funny enough. It makes 60 million, cost 11 million to run it, marketing, stuff like that. But then their R&D is 48 million. And then there's more and more. So basically they're making about a $20 million loss each year for the last 2 years. But for me, that's not a terrible company. The gearing is not wrong there. That's not bad at all. I think what it's telling me is that they realize that they have an older bit of software that only has a certain number of time left. Who knows what that could be? 5 years, 10 years, 1 year, who knows? But they have obviously come to the conclusion that if the rate of change outside your organization is faster than inside, you're probably already too late. And I think that's probably what's happened here is, they've tried many different projects, Dust 514, EVE Valkyrie, and so on. None of them have become the cash cow that EVE Online is. They've tried to leverage the IP of EVE Online, which is fantastic IP. They haven't really done that. I mean, Ark did that quite well with some of the animated stories, things like that. And Ark is, Wildcard, I think their name is. They are a very infamous developer, I can tell you. There is a lot of shady dealings over the whole Ark universe in games. But what I can tell you, and again, that's another one where the cash cow of Ark is being used to borrow money to do other projects that just aren't landing. So you could almost line up EVE Online and Ark in entirely the same place because they're not having a good time, is what I would say. But I think when it comes to things like EVE Frontiers, I know that there was a lot of investment from some other party to help build this game. That's all the kind of crypto-backed part of it. It's a quagmire when you think about it. It is a big messy bog of really who owns this, where is it going. If CCP is sold and a hedge fund buys it, they will stop all R&D innovation and they'll just say, right, sweat the asset until it's done, and then sell the IP to someone else, and then you'll have like 12 different versions of EVE from 12 different regions of the world. And who knows, maybe that's what people want. I want this. I like EVE Frontier. I think what it represents is very similar to things like Elite Dangerous, and but it has a much better, more accessible, user interface, accessibility. I think the way that it is just more friendly to play. Elite Dangerous is a wonderful game. Like I said in the last video, wonderful, but it's not as playable as this. This is more pretty, this is nice, this has less of a pilot's feel, this is more of a ship's feel. And for me, that's a really big difference. You're trying to do something a bit different, you should try and do something, that calls to the kind of style of the game. For me, EVE Online is an absolute unique game. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it. So to have then this second iteration of it, I think everyone should be totally on board with this, because it's not a case of saying all this money, this $48 million that we've spent on R&D last year, that should have gone into Eve. To do what? That's the issue. To do what with it? You cannot put 48 million into an existing product that's sunsetting and expect it to suddenly like jolt back into life. People have preconceptions about Eve. People will not return to Eve even if you do the best expansion ever. You have to either say new players, or you have to say, right, let's make Eve 2.0. I think they've made the right decision with this, because this to me is an interesting take on something like Eve Online for the next generation. You know, a lot of people playing games now, it's much more of a streamer's world. You know, if you get somebody streaming this in a kind of competitive way, suddenly you get, I think, a different type of player. So I have hope. I have hope that this could be something quite accessible, quite interesting. It's hard though. And I think the new player experience of this, if we thought Eve Online was bad, this is close to the cliff of doom. Because how on earth would you take someone who doesn't know Eve and put them in this and then feel comfortable and confident and happy that they wouldn't just literally get blown up first, they'd run out of fuel first jump, and that's it. You need to give them like lives or tokens and just give them the ability to a crystal that happens to be in your cargo hold, that when you crack it, it makes another whole cargo full of fuel. Maybe, who knows, who cares? Not my problem to solve. As a consumer of this, you know, this game and products that CCP have always done, I've always been incredibly partial to them. I don't think I've always been terribly nice about them, but I've always been partial to them. And I do think what we have here is compelling. And I'll tell you for why. I played this. I usually go to bed at like 1 in the morning. That's my pretty typical time to go to bed. Up at 5 because, you know, sleeping's for losers. And I'm joking, please sleep. But I think this is why it's interesting, because to me, I found that I was playing this till 3 in the morning. Now, there's not many games that keep me engaged like that. I thought something like Space Marine 2 would do that. It didn't. It got to literally like, I don't know, 11 p.m. and I'm like, right, I'm bored now. I'm going to go and play Factorio or something. So I do think there's something about it. I'm intrigued. I'm excited. It's not easy. It's got a long way to go for development. It is an alpha in every sense of the alpha, but I think you'll enjoy it. So give it a go. But there we go. Post in the comments. Tell me your views. I wish to know your mind waves on this topic. And I think particularly, let's hope it all goes well for CCP.